South Australian Liberal Senator Leah Blyth. Good morning.
Good morning, Tom, and good morning to your listeners.
Okay, so you've got two ideas. One is tax deduction for private school fees. Idea two is income splitting. Let's start with the first one. How would your proposal to make private school fees tax deductible, how would that work? And would it benefit those in any way who don't go to a private school?
Look, I think this is very much an idea that we're discussing. So I should put that on the record that this is not a policy, but something where I wanted to start a conversation. I think it's important to note that even the most elite private institutions do receive a significant amount of public funding every year. And the net effect for those parents is they're contributing, essentially twice, because they're not only paying school fees, but they're also contributing to the public system through general taxation. What we can look at doing is evening out that playing field, but also looking at how we are funding public schools. I think it's fair to say education standards have been dropping, particularly in our public schools across our nation for decades. And we've got to do something to make sure that we aren't leaving any children behind, while also appreciating our different families choose to educate their children. So this is about how do we give people the choices that they want, but also making sure that we're not leaving any children behind in that process.
Well, this is the thing, because, we've already had a few calls on this saying, well, you're just helping the wealthier end of society by potentially making private school fees tax deductible. So what you're saying is you cut government funding for private schools. That means the fees have to go up, all other things being equal. But the fees are more expensive, but because you get a tax deduction, that sort of brings them down on an after-tax basis. But do you, if money is saved by the government, are you proposing to put that money into state schools so that they are collectively better off?
And I will say this is all still with the Parliamentary Budget Office to look at, but that is how I would like to see it, so that we could then be investing smaller classroom sizes in public schools, assisting children in public schools that need the additional help, facilities, and I think everyone will sort of acknowledge that there is a big difference between opportunities that are offered between the two systems at the moment.
Sure, and so really, the success for this would be a narrowing of that difference, where the average of state schools is dragged up towards the average of private schools.
That's how I would hope it would work in reality. But like all ideas, and I'm sure there are people who, and this is part of starting these conversations, is there are people who know a lot more about this even than I do after 2 decades in education. But this is about starting those conversations and finding out from families what they want. And I think, our new leader, Susan, has said that she will stand for lower, simpler, fairer taxes. And this is part of having a look at all of those things and looking at where we can meet Australians and Australian families.
Okay, now your second idea, income splitting, we don't do it here, but it's quite common in the US, I believe. How would you envisage that working?
I would envisage that as for me, this is really a policy about accepting that, what does a modern family look like today? And I think it's fair to say that families have evolved significantly. And this isn't just about families that are raising children. This is looking at families who are caring for elderly or ageing parents or relatives, and also looking at those that might have children or relatives with significant special needs as dependents. So it's about valuing that not all work is paid work, particularly when it comes to, within a family system. So if we can look at a household where one partner is earning a significant amount of money and another one isn't, because they might be staying home to care for a loved one, whether that's a child or someone with special needs or an elderly parent, how can we make sure that it's fair? So how can the tax system accept and acknowledge that care work is work?
Well, just to put some numbers, let's just say you've got dad working full-time earning $120,000 a year, mum working part-time and taking care of kids and earning $40,000 a year. Total household income is $160,000. You're saying rather than dad being taxed at $120 and mum being taxed at $40, you put the two amounts together, you divide them by 2, total income is 160, they each pay tax on 80 grand and therefore pay less tax overall.
That's exactly right. So it would be treating them the same. At the moment, joint income families or households are disadvantaged. So if they were out on their own, that's how they would be taxed. But because they're together, that's not how it works for them. So I think it's really important that we are meeting, and this is about meeting modern Australian families where they are accepting.
Yeah, so just overall, what's happening here? I mean, you've lost an election pretty badly. I'm talking about the Liberal National Party coalition here. And you're now sort of throwing some ideas around in the hope of forming some different policies down the track that will hopefully appeal to Australian voters.
I think that's exactly, it's not so much about appealing to Australian voters. It's about, for us, this is really about making sure that we've got a fair and equal tax system.
Yeah, but sorry, you're not going to get a fair and equal tax system under your watch unless you appeal to Australian voters. I mean, you've got to win elections.
We will have to win elections, absolutely. And I think we are committed now more than ever to making sure that we are taking the time to get it right. But also, we've got to respect modern Australia, and we've got to represent modern Australia. And I think that's the really key part of this for us. And I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I am in a demographic where we haven't necessarily appealed to young women, and I think it's really important that we start these conversations, and it's really fantastic to hear some of the feedback that comes from that.
All right. Thank you for your time. Good luck with it. Leah Blyth there, South Australian Liberal Senator. Well, you